My mother-in-law gave every grandchild a gift except me, so I gave her the DNA test results. Have you ever watched someone hand out love like candy and skip right past you? That was my mother-in-law. She arrived at the holiday dinner with a big bag of carefully wrapped presents, one for every grandchild. Except mine. She smiled, hugged the others, handed out gifts with laughter, and when my daughter reached out eagerly, she simply said, "Oh, maybe next time." But I had a gift too. One she never saw coming. Hi, I'm Rachel. A mother. Wife. And apparently, the one my husband's family pretended didn't exist. For years, I smiled through sharp remarks, passive-aggressive jabs, and empty holiday cheer. But this ignoring my daughter like she wasn't part of the family, that was the moment something shifted in me. That night, as I tucked my daughter into bed, she whispered, "Did Grandma forget me?" And I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. Because love doesn't forget. Love doesn't skip. And love certainly doesn't play favorites. Has anyone ever made you feel like an outsider in your own family? Drop a comment, I read them all. Because you deserve to be seen too. And what happened next? Well, before the silence broke, I started paying attention. Because the truth. It was already whispering behind closed doors. Part 1. The Pattern of Exclusion. Have you ever watched a room full of smiles and realized none of them were meant for you? That was my life every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering. Hi, I'm Rachel, and this isn't just a story about a forgotten gift. It's about the quiet ways people show you exactly where you stand and what happens when you decide not to stand there anymore. From the very beginning, I felt it. The subtle shift in my mother-in-law's tone when she said my name. The way her hugs were just a little longer with the other daughters-in-law. The way her compliments always had a second edge. "You're looking comfortable today, Rachel. Lily's such a spirited child. Not exactly quiet, is she?" It was the kind of exclusion you can't prove, but you feel it, bone deep. And my daughter Lily, she felt it too. Every Christmas, the cousins would unwrap hand-sewn quilts, personalized ornaments, even savings bonds. Lily would get nothing. Not even a card. I made excuses. I filled in the gaps. "Oh, Grandma must have left yours in the car. Maybe it got lost in the mail." One birthday, we all visited Grandma's house. Her hallway was lined with framed photos, smiling faces of every grandchild. Every single one except Lily. I stood there, staring at that wall, trying not to let it sink in. When I asked Jacob, my husband, he sighed and said, "Babe, that's just how Mom is. Don't take it so personally." But how could I not? This was our daughter. Our kind, bright, beautiful little girl. And every time she got overlooked, I felt like I had failed her just a little more. The final straw came at a summer barbecue. We were all gathered in the backyard. The sun was shining, the grill was going, and Grandma, my mother-in-law, had this big canvas tote with her. Inside were wrapped gifts for all the grandkids. Toys, books, cute little outfits. One by one, the kids were called forward. "Here you go, Mason. This one's for Ellie. Oh, I know Ava will love this." And then silence. No gift for Lily. She looked up at me, confused but hopeful. And then, with the saddest little smile, she went back to playing in the grass. That night, after the barbecue, as I tucked her into bed, Lily whispered, "Mommy, did Grandma forget me again?" I kissed her forehead and said, "No, sweetheart. She just made a mistake." But inside I was breaking. Because I knew it wasn't a mistake. It was a message. And that was the moment something shifted in me. I had spent so long trying to keep the peace. Trying not to ruffle feathers. Trying to be the bigger person. But all that did was teach my daughter that silence is how we survive disrespect. Not anymore. Have you ever swallowed your hurt just to keep things from falling apart, only to realize they were already broken? Let me know in the comments. I'm listening. Promise. Because that night, as I sat in the dark holding Lily's forgotten bedtime story, I made a decision. I would stop wondering why she didn't love us the same. And I would start finding out what she was hiding. Because when I started asking questions, what I found wasn't just about favoritism. It was about truth. And it changed everything. Part 2. Whispers and Warnings. Have you ever sensed that the truth was sitting just beneath the surface, quiet, waiting, and once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it? That's where I found myself. After years of subtle rejection, after watching my daughter be left out time and time again, something inside me stirred. I wasn't just sad anymore. I was curious. And that curiosity led me somewhere I never expected. Started with a photo. Just an old one on the mantel, Jacob with his siblings on a family vacation. I was flipping through albums, trying to make sense of all the missing moments. And then it hit me. Lily had been born just 6 months after Jacob returned from a long work trip overseas. A trip that took him away for nearly 2 months at a time, when we were trying, hoping, planning to start a family. I remembered how it had been tough, how we thought maybe we'd need help to conceive. But then surprise. Positive test. A miracle, we called it. Still, I'd never doubted. Not once. Lily was Jacob's daughter. I never questioned it. But now I was starting to realize I might be the only one who never had. One evening, after a few too many glasses of wine, Jacob's sister leaned in close to me during a family dinner. "Mom always said something didn't add up," she whispered. She said Lily looked nothing like the rest of the family. She laughed it off as gossip. But my heart didn't. I didn't sleep that night. Because it wasn't about who Lily looked like. It was about the quiet rejection, the cold glances, the missing gifts. It was about a woman who had treated my child like a stranger in her own bloodline. And maybe, just maybe, she believed that because she thought Lily wasn't family at all. I didn't want to believe it. But I had to know. So I ordered a home DNA kit. Quietly. I waited for the right night, when Jacob was sound asleep. I swabbed the inside of Lily's cheek gently, whispering a bedtime story as I did it. Then I carefully swabbed Jacob's, pretending to fix his pillow as he snored. I sealed the package with shaking hands and sent it off the next morning. And then I waited. Those were the longest days of my life. Every dinner felt like a performance. Every glance at Jacob, at Lily, was filled with guilt and fear. What if I was wrong for even questioning it? What if I was right? I kept imagining scenarios, what I would say, how I would protect Lily, how I would shield her from any shame, any pain. Because no matter what that envelope said, she was my daughter, my whole heart. And I would never let anyone make her feel like she was less. Let me ask you something. If you had even the smallest doubt, would you chase the truth? Would you risk upsetting the whole family just to bring peace to one child? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading every one. Because when the results finally arrived, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat down, took a deep breath, and made a decision. Because some truths don't just break silence, they rewrite everything you thought you knew. Part 3. The Truth Unwrapped. Have you ever held the truth in your hand and known it was more powerful than any argument you could ever make? That's how it felt the day the DNA results arrived. I opened the envelope alone, heart pounding in my chest like a drum I couldn't silence. My hands were trembling, but my mind was calm. I had prepared for anything, every possible scenario. But the one I got, it was simple. Jacob was Lily's biological father. 99.99%. Undeniable. I reread it 3 times, not because I doubted it, but because something inside me needed the confirmation to sink in. Not for me. For Lily. And suddenly, every insult, every cold glance, every skipped gift, it all burned away. Not with rage. Not with tears. With clarity. I didn't run to Jacob waving the results. I didn't call his mother to demand an apology. I didn't even tell Lily, because this wasn't about forcing anyone to feel guilty. This was about restoring what had been quietly stolen from my daughter. Her place in the family. Mother's Day was the perfect stage. The whole family was gathering at Jacob's parents' house. Lily had drawn a sweet little picture of flowers and written, "Happy Mother's Day, Grandma," in crayon, not knowing she'd been overlooked again and again. I added one more card to the pile. It wasn't fancy. Just white cardstock folded neatly. Inside, I placed a copy of the DNA report, wrapped gently with a gold ribbon. And on the envelope I wrote, "For Lily." We arrived with smiles and hugs like we always did. But I noticed Veronica Jacobs' mom doing the same thing she always did. Greeting every grandchild with a special gift or compliment and skipping over Lily with that same distant smile. I said nothing. Until dessert. As the family passed slices of cake around the table, I reached into my bag and handed the envelope to Veronica. "I brought one more Mother's Day card," I said. She looked surprised but took it. She opened the envelope slowly. Her fingers paused when she saw the gold ribbon. And then she pulled out the paper. "Read it." Her face drained of color. The room fell still. You could hear forks resting on plates. Everyone watched her, confused. Some of them nervous. And I simply said, "I thought you might want to know who your real granddaughter is." There was no yelling. No dramatic scene. Just silence. The kind of silence that settles in when truth walks through the door and takes a seat at the head of the table. Veronica didn't say a word. She just folded the paper back up, tucked it into her lap and looked down. Jacob's eyes met mine across the table. He didn't say anything either. But he reached under the table and gently squeezed my hand. It said more than words ever could. "Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever proven someone wrong not by fighting, not by arguing, but with quiet, undeniable facts? Because sometimes, the loudest statement you can make is a document in an envelope. Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your stories, the ones where you took your power back with grace." But the most unexpected moment came later when Lily pulled me aside, looked up at me with those big eyes, and asked a question I'll never forget. Part 4. A child's clarity. Have you ever been so exhausted from proving your worth that you finally stopped needing someone else's permission to feel whole? That was me. After years of quiet battles, silent tears, and biting my tongue at every family gathering, I thought the DNA results would be the loudest truth I'd ever speak. But what came next was quieter. And so much more powerful. The day after Mother's Day, everything felt different. Not loud. Not triumphant. Just still. Lily and I were baking cookies in the kitchen, her apron covered in flour, her little fingers carefully decorating each one. And out of nowhere, she looked up at me with those big curious eyes and said, "Mommy, you don't have to fight for me anymore. I already know you love me." I nearly dropped the mixing spoon. That tiny sentence unraveled something tight in my chest that I hadn't even realized I'd been holding in. Because that was all I ever wanted, for her to feel loved, fully and without conditions, no matter who tried to dim her light. That moment changed everything. Not because the truth was finally out there, but because I realized my daughter didn't need validation from someone who couldn't even see her in the first place. She had already learned something it took me years to figure out: love isn't something you chase. Something you recognize. Later that evening, Jacob sat me down. There was no defensiveness in his voice. No excuses this time. "I was wrong," he said. "I thought I was keeping the peace, but really I was letting it break you." I didn't need an apology from his mother. But I did need one from him. And when he gave it freely, I knew something had shifted, not just in our marriage, but in the way he saw me. We had a long, hard conversation about boundaries. About protecting our daughter's heart the way we should have done from the start. And together we made a decision. Fewer visits. Honest expectations. No more pretending everything was fine for the sake of appearances. I also started something just for Lily. Memory book. But not about milestones or birthdays. It was filled with letters. Words I wanted her to hold on to long after I was gone. "You are seen. You are cherished. You belong." I wrote those words again and again in different ways on different pages. Because if the world ever tried to convince her otherwise, she'd have something real to come back to. And what about my mother-in-law? She never apologized. Not once. But she started treating Lily differently. Gifts showed up. Birthday cards arrived. There was effort, awkward, delayed, but there. Maybe guilt. Maybe pressure. I didn't care why anymore. I cared that my daughter wasn't invisible. And me. I stopped showing up for approval. I started showing up for myself. Because healing isn't about waiting for someone else to right their wrongs. It's about choosing peace, even when the apology never comes. Let me ask you something. Have you ever found freedom in letting go of someone's permission to feel valued? Have you ever looked at someone who once hurt you and realized they no longer hold any power? If you've felt that quiet freedom, I'd love for you to share your story in the comments. Let's celebrate each other's resilience together. Because sometimes, the greatest gift we can give our children is showing them how to rise without rage. How to stay soft in a world that's tried to harden you. And how to make peace louder than pain. I didn't bring out the DNA test to hurt anyone. I did it to protect my daughter's heart, to show her that truth matters, and that being loved should never feel like a test. Sometimes, standing up quietly says more than shouting ever could. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like and subscribe to My Family Tragedy. We share real stories of strength, healing, and family because your voice matters here. And who knows, maybe the next story we tell will be yours. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.